Hello and welcome to the UCIPM Urban and Community webinar series. We are thrilled today to have Dr. Lynn Kimsey talk about spiders and arachnophobia. Dr. Kimsey is the director of the Bohart Museum of Entomology and a professor in the Department of Entomology and Nematology at UC Davis. Her research interests include the systematics of stinging wasps and mosquitoes, as well as urban entomology. Her outreach specialties include insect diversity, civil forensics, and arthropod-related industrial hygiene. She has authored over 135 journal articles and books, over 17 reports, and more than 75 arthropod information pages. In addition to all of the activities I did not read out from her bio, Lynn has also served as an expert witness in a number of homicide and civil court cases. Because of one memorable case dealing with insect residue on a car radiator, she worked with NASA and Boeing engineers studying the effects and mitigation of bug splats on jet wings. Everything having to do with insects has been her passion her entire career. Lynn, you may now share your slides.
I'm very happy to give you guys a little rundown on my ideas about spiders, spider things, and so on. So I'm calling this arachnophobia, little did you know. All right, so who's involved? Maybe I should say not who, but what. And I'm going to talk about spiders and their relatives, a little bit about their biology. Should you be afraid, and if so, of what? Okay, this is not a spider, even though it's supposed to be terrifying and all that. Not a spider. So why should we care about spiders other than, smashing them with our shoes or whatever? But they are very, very important predators in our environment. And particularly in the sort of urban suburban setting, they eat large numbers of pest species, particularly herbivorous insects. This also applies to agriculture when you're not doing a lot of spraying, but they're actually a pretty important part of our environment. All right, spiders are arachnids, and this group includes spiders, mites and ticks, scorpions, harvestmen, whip scorpions, vinegaroons, and camel spiders. And I've got images here of all of them except the scorpion. Okay, harvestmen, whip scorpions, and vinegaroons, camel spiders, they may look terrifying. They have absolutely no possible way to injure you. They have no venom whatsoever. They're just big and derpy. I love that word. All right, only these ones are venomous, and mostly that's because they have saliva in the first two cases in spiders and mites and ticks that is potentially toxic, and then scorpions have venom in their tail gland. Okay, this group, spiders particularly, are characterized by having 8 or more legs, 2 major body parts, and this is how you distinguish them from insects, for example. They have the head and thorax are fused into a single body part, and then the abdomen. They don't have wings, no antennae, and at the end of the abdomen, many of them have spinnerets that spin silk. They also have very different kinds of eyes than insects do, and they're very simple eyes, single facet eyes, anywhere from 0 to 8 different ones. Okay, all spiders use venom to both capture and begin digestion of their prey. I mean, think about it. They have very simple mouth parts, so basically they can only feed on liquids. So their venom has to serve both of these functions, both to prevent prey from escaping and to do the digestion. In 99.9% of the cases, humans are basically unaffected by this venom. And if you come right down to it, there are really only 4 spiders globally that are dangerous to humans. And that includes the Sydney funnel web spider, that's found in Australia, the widow spiders like our black widow, this is a global group, the Brazilian wandering spider, and the African sand spider. So 4 out of the entire guild of spiders are really potentially dangerous. Okay, and here's some pictures of them. They're kind of, okay, I get into this kind of thing. I think they're cool looking. The African sand spider is a cyarid and very sand colored. Brazilian wandering spiders, pretty colorful. Widow spiders, you're all familiar with, so they can be colorful. And then the funnel web is a very shiny, very large black spider. In California, well, pretty straightforward. I'm going to go over the major spider groups that people would encounter. Just give you a little background on each of these. This is one of my personal favorites, the crab spiders that are pretty much the color of the plant that they sit on, or the flower that they sit in. And they prey on insects that come in to visit the flower. So, jumping spiders. Everybody's gotten very fond of these because there's a lot written about their intelligence. These are probably the most intelligent of the spiders. And I'm not comparing intelligence with what mammals have, for example, but for an arthropod, they're right on there. They have incredible vision. And these little guys don't make webs. They might spin a guy line when they're jumping from plant to plant, but that's pretty much it. They're free range predators. And the one that we have commonly here in this part of California, at least, is Phytopus audax, which is the one on the lower left that has the bright metallic colored chelicerae. Really a nice animal. Now, tarantulas, these are among our largest spiders. There are quite a few species in California. These guys are long-lived. They can live decades. So as far as we know, the longest lived one that I've heard of at least was 30 years. So this is an animal that has quite an investment in maintaining a place to live. These guys live in burrows, and they use silk to line the burrows. Oftentimes they'll make a little flappy cap for it, especially in the, there's another guild that are kind of similar to straight up tarantulas. Places like Mount Diablo will see migrations on a seasonal basis, and this is basically male tarantulas looking for love, right? The females stay in their burrows for the most part, and the males migrate out to find mates. None of the ones in California are even slightly venomous to humans. Now, the orb weavers, this is another group of, they can get pretty big. There's one species that you find in riparian areas that can get, I don't know, the leg dimensions. It could be 1.5 inches, 2 inches across. So pretty big. And these are the ones that everybody thinks of that build these large, beautiful webs. They become most obvious in the fall, late summer. That's when they're adults. The webs are big. This is another group where the venom is completely harmless to humans. Bet you didn't know there were social spiders. This is a modest-sized web from, I'm not quite sure where this was from, maybe Southeast Asia, but they live in huge sort of collaborative colonies. And the webs could be as much, I saw webs of some of these social spiders in Indonesia that occupied almost a full acre, a single web, right? So we see these along some of the river systems. I saw them up near Reading, along the river, and they're harmless, but kind of cool. Sheet web spiders, these are also very common, and you see them, their webs mostly when there's a heavy dew in the morning. And so the webs, you see these little pale sheets and lawns and things like this. They're small brown spiders. Their webs are kind of messy sheets of webbing. And again, this is a group that's totally harmless to humans. Cellar spiders. If you own a home, you've got these guys. They are exotic pests from Europe, and it looks like they probably came over in the old sailing ships that the British and Spanish came over to the West Coast in, although they may have migrated over from the East Coast. They've been here a long time. They make loose, messy webs, and they don't take them down. That was the thing about the orb weavers, is they will take down their webs and eat the silk, and then put a new one up every morning. Now these cellar spiders, they like eaves, quiet corners. There's a lot of mythology about them being venomous, but they can't break the skin, but they're harmless. Their venom is not harmful to humans, even if they could break the skin. Wolf spiders. That's another group that doesn't build webs. Females will use silk to make an egg case that she carries around until her babies hatch. Then the babies ride around on her till they get to a certain size. These are free-range predators and harmless to humans. I've never found anyone who's been bitten by one. Even if people pick them up, they just don't do it. This is my personal favorite spider for weirdness. They're called sow bug killers, and they're common in damp places, wood piles and places like that. Sometimes they'll blunder indoors. They're very shiny, red and grayish colored, and they have these strange sort of horizontal jaws. And they feed almost specifically on sow bugs and pill bugs. This is another one that was introduced from Europe, we don't know how long ago, but they are also harmless to humans. You see the little bitty eyes right in the middle of the head. Yeah. Now widow spiders. These are the most venomous spiders in North America. There are two common species in California now. The black widow, which has been here forever, and the brown widow, which was apparently a recent introduction to California, made its way up from Southern California, now into Northern California. These guys prefer sheltered, quiet places, and their silk is very tough. So if you touch the webbing, you know it's a black widow or a widow spider, simply because it's tough and it has a certain amount of pull to it. Now I bring this up because the silk is so tough and so perfectly even in dimension that it was used for the crosshairs in B-1 bombers for targeting the sites. That's pretty impressive. Lynx spiders, these are kind of cool looking. They have very spiny legs, and they kind of hang out in vegetation. Very common in gardens. They make a very simple sort of silken retreat, and they're also harmless to humans. And you can see the one eating another spider. So there's a lot of competition. Yellow sac spiders. These guys make small, messy webs in vegetation, mostly to protect their eggs. So I've seen them in my roses, for example, and you'll find them at the base of the leaf with sort of a messy web that the female and her eggs are sitting underneath. Active predators, great on flies, and again, despite mythology, they are harmless to humans. Crab spiders, another group of free-living predators. Like I mentioned before, they're often colored the same as the flower they sit in. They just simply use silk to protect their eggs. They're sit-and-wait predators. They don't go out looking for prey. They just sit very quietly until something comes by, which is why they sit in flowers. And they're harmless to humans. Okay, so let's talk about other spiders, the ones that we're taught to fear. This includes black widows, brown recluse, hobo spiders, and funnel web spiders. Now, black widows have a relatively well-earned reputation. Their venom is neurotoxic, and it causes fever, muscle and joint aches, cramping. It does not cause sores, and it's rarely fatal. And in fact, there's a good anti-venom. But there's more to this story. Think about it. Here in the Central Valley, at least, there are probably at least 30 black widows per property. Now these are very shy spiders, so if you disturb the web, they go up into a hole and hide until you leave. Bites are extremely rare because they really are reluctant to bite. And often the bites are dry. We call them dry bites because they don't deliver venom. I mean, think about this. Here's a spider where the venom is a critical part of their survival, for defense and for feeding. It's very expensive to manufacture, so they're not going to waste venom on something that's 10,000 times their size. They might give you a good fanging, but chances of getting the venom are pretty slim. Now, brown recluses or recluse spiders. There are several species in North America, and very much like black widows, they tend to live in very quiet, dark places, so you rarely encounter them. And they are also very reluctant to bite, which is why they got the name recluses. Okay, but so look at the distribution here. The so-called brown recluse is Oxosceles reclusa. It's found basically east of the Rockies in the southeast. Right? We have one species in California, only one, and that's Deserta. Now, here's a reality check. This series of images has been all over the internet for several years now. This is not a spider bite. Okay? These large necrotic lesions are caused almost exclusively by MRSA or strep A. Okay, MRSA is antibiotic resistant staphylococcus, okay, which are really, really dangerous. It is not a spider bite, but it's touted online as being a spider bite. There's so much misinformation online. Okay, California has the largest number of diagnosed brown recluse spider bites in the United States, but there are no brown recluses. So I think this is a failure of the medical profession as much as anything. All recluse bites in California are either bacterial infections or something else. There was never a spider there. The photograph below is a classic brown recluse spider bite from Texas. See a lesion? It's a little red, but that's pretty much it. Okay, so it doesn't occur within 1,000 miles of California. And this California species that I showed you on the distribution map is found in pack rat nests in the desert. I've never seen it anywhere else. In fact, this is, stories from beyond. In Kansas, a family noticed a few spiders that looked like brown recluse. So they started collecting them in their century-old farmhouse. After 1 year, they had collected more than 2,000 brown recluse spiders from this house. No one had ever been bitten. Yeah. Okay, Hobo Spiders. These guys are also known as giant house spiders. They don't occur in California, but they are touted as being as dangerous as brown recluse spiders. Again, the bite is said to cause necrotic sores. This is an urban myth. And again, these sores are basically bacterial infections. Anytime you see this classic red welt, it could be flat red, but red with a little white bubble in the middle, that's a bacterial infection. Yellow sac spiders, they're also said to cause necrotic sores. Again, these sores are caused by skin infections. This spider, if it bites you, might form a painful red lump. But see, this spider bite on the right-hand side is a classic bacterial staph infection. Okay, so just to sort of wrap that up, only a few spiders are really dangerous to humans. This includes the Sydney funnel web spider, the widow spiders, of course, Brazilian wandering spider, and the African sand spider. And this is even more spectacular. The first death from a spider bite in Australia in 37 years occurred in 2016. All right, so they have the Sydney funnel web. This is the first bite in over almost 40 years. The last death supposedly caused by a spider bite occurred in California in 1976, and this was due to septicemia. So it probably wasn't a spider bite. It started out as a staph infection. Brazilian wandering spider causes about 6 deaths a year. And then hobo spiders, no deaths have been attributed to this one. And according to spider physiology and behavior, there were only about 100 deaths from spider bites globally during the 20th century. Yeah. But we love to fear things we don't understand. Okay, Riverside also has a useful link. I will give these to Belinda et al. To post for you guys if you want more information. All right, let's talk about ticks, since they're kind of related to spiders. There are 2 kinds of ticks, especially here in California. You get the hard ticks, which are long-legged, body parts are easy to see, and when they feed, they stay attached for days. Soft ticks, on the other hand, are short-legged. It all looks like one body part, and they're hit-and-run artists. They only feed for 5 to 10 minutes and then drop off. Very, very different feeding behaviors. Okay, like spiders, they have 2 basic body parts, the head and cephalothorax, and then the abdomen. They also have, on the back of the thorax, cephalothorax, they have this big shield, and that's called the scutellum. And then the front end is what I call the bitey part, the rostrum. This is what they feed with. Ticks undergo 3 molts: a larval stage, juvenile, and adult. The larva can be identified because, for whatever reason, they only have 6 legs. When they molt to the juvenile stage, they develop an extra pair of legs, and then adults also have 8 legs. In the hard ticks, you can distinguish the sex of the tick by the size of the scutellum. So if you look at the picture, the male, you can't even see the abdomen. The scutellum covers the entire back of the body, whereas in the female, it only covers part of its short. The way the 2 different kinds of ticks feed is also quite different. With hard ticks, males don't feed. So if you find a male on you, doesn't matter. Females stay attached and feed for up to 2 weeks. Now, how they do this is significant for disease transmission. Okay, so for the first 2 days, they only take in cell contents, cells in the adjacent skin where they've begun feeding. Their saliva causes the cells in the vicinity of the bite to leak. And it's only after the first couple of days that they actually start blood feeding. They will do this until they look like they're going to explode, right? So you can see the difference in the way they look from being fed 2 days, 7 days, 14 days. Soft ticks, really different. Both sexes feed. I don't even know how you tell the sexes apart, to be honest. They do not remain attached. Like I said, they're hit and run artists. So their feeding episodes take 5 to 10 minutes and then they drop off. So you may not even know you've been bitten until hours later. So here's one of the significant parts. When ticks, and think of ticks as just being giant mites, basically. So chigger mites, for example, that's actually what's in the picture that's shown here. Blood feed as well. When they insert their mouth parts into the skin, they secrete a protein sheath around the mouth parts. This acts as a feeding tube, and it also protects the tick's mouth parts from your immune system. Okay, when they leave, this feeding tube remains in the skin, and this is what you react to. plus the saliva, right? Because it's foreign protein. I don't care what you do. When you remove a tick, the head is never left behind. It's just this feeding tube that they've created. So here are our commonest ticks. There are a number of others, but these are the ones that people encounter most often. The western blackleg tick, Ixodes pacificus, the Pacific coast tick, pajuelo tick, and the kennel tick. Now, the black-legged tick, said Ixodes pacificus, is pretty much found in the late winter spring because it requires damp conditions. Now, it's found primarily along the coast and in the coastal range and sort of western mid-altitude Sierra. These guys are found in low vegetation where they feed mostly on rodents, deer, and reptiles. The thing about these guys is their saliva is considered to be venomous to humans. I don't know about other animals, but humans it certainly is. Pacific coast tick, Dermacentor occidentalis, is without question the commonest tick in California. Found in the summer, transported in large numbers by deer, wild pigs, cattle, so on. And they sit on vegetation, sort of like this, with their front legs up, waiting for hosts to come by. The pajuelo tick is one that you've probably never seen. It's also quite abundant. You find it in oak park woodland mostly, in the sort of duff below trees where animals sleep, because they primarily feed on cattle, deer, horses that sleep underneath these trees. This being said, don't ever picnic under an oak tree in grassland. It's a really bad idea. Remember, they feed for 5 to 10 minutes, they get on, feed, drop off, and you'll never know they're there until you start itching the next day. The kennel tick or dog tick, Rhipicephalus sanguineus, is pretty much found worldwide. I think humans and their pets have transported it almost everywhere. This one is a problem because it can complete its entire life cycle indoors if there are pets. The pests of homes and kennels, dogs are the preferred host for these ticks. This one can transmit canine ehrlichiosis, canine babesiosis, as well as Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Now, ticks and disease. I mean, I talked about that a little bit with the previous tick, but there are really only 2 human tick-borne diseases in California. Relapsing fever, which is transmitted by soft ticks, and Lyme disease, which is transmitted by the deer tick, the Ixodes pacificus. Then you have the whole issue of bite toxicity, which is true of the deer tick and the soft ticks. Now, another urban myth is that you can get Lyme disease in California. It's actually extremely rare. And the reason why, okay, so Lyme disease is caused by a protozoan called Borrelia. It's not a protozoan. Anyway, Borrelia burgdorferi, right? This is primarily a parasite of deer mice and lizards. In California, only about 2% of these ticks have the pathogen. And like I said, there are very few human cases in California. And the reason is because the nymphs preferentially feed on reptiles. This breaks the transmission cycle. The other thing, even in places where Lyme disease is a problem, the tick, remember how long it takes before the tick actually starts blood feeding? It has to be blood feeding. In other words, it has to be attached and feeding for more than 48 hours to actually be able to transmit at all. Right? I think within 48 hours, you probably notice you had a tick on you, but that's why I tell people when they come in out of the field to shower with a friend, right? Just have somebody help you pick it over. Okay, and then the other thing too is that the California Ixodes are really only present and feeding in the spring, and they do need these damp conditions. So you got sort of this window when there's a potential problem, but that's all. Here's the current distribution of Ixodes pacificus. And there are projections that the populations might expand as conditions get warmer. But I think what's really going to happen is populations will shrink as conditions get drier, because these are damp condition ticks. They preferentially, that's why they're not found midsummer, it's too dry. All right, tick bites. Like I said, two species here are considered to be venomous, the deer tick and the pajuelo tick. Their bites are painful, but they also often result in this bullseye bruise. Now, this is often attributed to infection by Lyme disease causing pathogen, but here in California, this is simply a reaction to the tick saliva itself. There's no pathogen involved. Very distinctive bullseye bruise. Okay, and then some of my personal favorite silliness is tick removal. There are all kinds of awesomely silly, elaborate tick removal utensils and tools found online. In fact, the funniest one I ever heard of was that you had to rotate the tick to the right like a corkscrew, because they corkscrew themselves into your skin. Yeah, no. But, so you can waste a lot of money on this kind of silly thing. Best tick removal, take your fingers, pair of forceps, just grab the thing and pull. The head is never left behind. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to dig out, the stuff. It'll go away on its own. And what I tell people, and we did this in Panama, where, oh my God, the tick populations were enormous, is we just carried a strip of masking tape on our pant leg. And then as we saw ticks on our clothing, we just used the masking tape to collect the ticks. It was awesome. By the end of the day, you could have, 20 or 30. Okay, so human deaths on an annual basis. These are numbers, estimated numbers of human deaths caused by animals. You can see here, number one on the hit parade are mosquitoes. And that's not because of the mosquito bite, it's because of the pathogens that they transmit, right? So these are basically deaths caused by pathogens. Snakes, not even, a tenth that number. Dogs, same. Tsetse flies, kissing bugs, freshwater snails, again, these are pathogens that they transmit, not the actual animal. Scorpion deaths, on a global basis, if you figure that there are, 5 billion people on Earth, this is pretty small. And only 7 spiders. Hippos kill more people than spiders. But if you're really going to go down to evaluating your risk, then clearly the animal that kills the largest number of human beings is human beings. It's more, and this is just based on homicides, this is more than all other animals combined. So one of the reasons we fear spiders and ticks and things like this is because we don't understand them. We don't know anything about them. Fear in most people is guided by ignorance. You fear what you don't know, what you don't understand. We understand people, so we don't fear people the way we fear things like spiders and hippos. Well, I don't know if we fear hippos. We should fear hippos. But I think that's really what it comes down to, is that if you evaluate your risk properly, then you really have to pay attention to people. I'm afraid I've gone through this way too fast. But let me wrap up with this. This is the most dangerous animal on Earth and is responsible for millions of deaths every year. Walking on its fingers is a black widow. Need I say more? And I'm done. Thank you very much, everybody, for this. Questions?
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kimsey.